We landed on really positive.
All right, everything is turned on and everything is working whenever you're ready.
Great. Thank you, Casaria. So I think we'll wait just one more minute to get started. So not too many people have shown up. All right. So it is 1 o'clock now. I think we're ready to start. We're streaming, right, Casaria?
Yes, you are.
All right. And I hear a couple more people chiming in. So I expect we'll have some folks joining along the way. But just wanted to say good afternoon and welcome to everyone to the very last Farm and Forest Improvement Rulemaking Advisory Committee meeting. So we were actually internally discussing whether or not to keep this meeting since the commission did not ask for additional feedback from the RAC at the hearing on September 27th. However, we have gotten a number of questions from some of the RAC members on the amendments and the process going forward. So we decided to keep this meeting primarily with the intention of going over the process and answering any outstanding questions that members might have. And so that is really going to be the focus of the conversation this afternoon. I don't imagine that will go more than an hour, but we'll see how it evolves. So I think we'll start with a quick round of introductions, although we know each other quite well at this point. I do want to confirm who was able to make the call today. I know that several people weren't. So I'll just go ahead and start. And then I'll just go through our list by first name alphabetically. So I'm Hilary Foote, and I'm the current Farm and Forest Specialist for the Department of Land Conservation and Development, and I've been supporting this Rulemaking Advisory Committee over the past several months. And I'll also introduce some other key DLCD staff who are on the call with us today and have been supporting the advisory committee as well. So Casaria is going to be with us for a few more moments this morning.
Good afternoon, everyone. Casaria Taylor, Senior Rules Coordinator.
And we have Gordon Howard.
Hello, everyone. I'm Gordon Howard. I'm the Community Services Division Manager for DLCD.
And Aurora.
Everyone, Aurora Jettle. I'm our Legislative and Policy Analyst for the department.
Is there anybody else from DLCD on this morning? I don't think so. Okay.
Don't see anyone.
I don't believe Alyssa has joined. I know Amber is not available. Is Austin on the call? I don't think so. Okay. Blair?
Hi, Blair Batson, Staff Attorney, 1000 Friends of Oregon.
Okay. And Charles?
Yes. Hi there, Charles Bennett, Jackson County Planning.
And it looks like we have Olivier for Elaine this morning.
Yeah, Olivier Jamin with the
No,
Search
I'm
Maine
feeling like-
on behalf of Oregon White Advocacy Oregon White Girl Association.
Okay, great. And it doesn't look like we have Ken on the call this morning. or Jim Johnson.
It's no, I just don't think that's.
Was Jan able to join this morning? No. Okay. So we have a couple of people coming in. And I don't believe that Jeff was able to join us either. And I know that Joy is not able to join us today. Justin.
Yeah, good afternoon, Justin Green, Justin B. Green Consulting, former Oregon DEQ water quality administrator.
Great. Thank you for being with us this morning. And I don't believe Catherine was able to join us this afternoon either. Is Lauren available? Is Lauren here with us today? No.
Yeah, your question was.
Maitri was not able to join. Is Megan with us? And Mike, I believe, is in the harvest. And I don't believe Mickey is available today either. Is Nellie on? No.
You know, to.
Then Rob?
Now, finder.
Hi, I'm
Letting
Rob
people know
Halliburton. I'm
again.
representing Friends of Yamhill County.
Great. Good to see you, Rob. And I don't see, is Rory on as well?
That was
No.
one question, that might have big time.
Alyssa, we were just going over introductions. Did you want to say hi?
So, Alyssa Bowles, planning manager, Berlin County.
Great, thank you. And Samantha?
Hey, Samantha Bear with the Oregon Property Owners Association.
All right. I think, and then Tyler, I don't think was able to join us this afternoon either. So is there anybody who I didn't call on who's with us this afternoon? No. Okay. All right. So before we start, I just want to take a moment to sincerely thank all of you for participating in this effort. There have been a really large amount of material that we've reviewed outside of the long hours of meetings that we've hosted. And these have been some pretty nuanced and technical conversations. So whether you are volunteering your personal time to this effort or your agency or your business's time, DLCD would like to acknowledge that and express our gratitude for your feedback, for participating in this. We have valued the wide range of feedback that we've received on this process. So we first started meeting back in March. That kicked off the start of this rulemaking process. And as we're meeting between March and July, DSCD was collecting written feedback from the public, as well as feedback from our conversations with the Rulemaking Advisory Committee. And that period was used, and all of that feedback was used to inform development of the agency's rulemaking proposal. So in July, that proposal was developed by DLCD staff. It was reviewed internally and then by the Department of Justice. And then that proposal was filed with the Secretary of State at the end of August and was officially noticed at the beginning of September. And since September, the rulemaking process has moved into a second phase, what I would call the commission phase. And that is the phase of the rulemaking where the Law and Conservation Development Commission is considering staff's proposal, and they are considering public comment on that proposal. So our staff role really at this point is to explain the proposal to the commission, answer questions, and provide additional information that the commission may need to support their upcoming deliberations on the rulemaking. And that was really the focus of the hearing on September 27th. So at that hearing, we reviewed the proposal with the commission and answered questions that they had on it. And at that hearing, the commission heard quite a lot of public testimony on the proposal as well. I just wanted to pause and say, as we noted at the commission hearing, the proposal that was filed with the Secretary of State and was noticed in early September represents a limit on what the commission can consider for the rulemaking at this point. So at this point in time, the commission may choose to modify the proposal within the scope of what has been noticed. They could choose to not include certain amendments. They could choose not to include particular language, but they cannot add new items to the proposal. They can't do more than what's been noticed. So now where we are following that September 27th hearing, the department is continuing to collect written testimony for the commission. We'll continue to collect those written comments until 11:55 p.m. on October 16th, which is next Wednesday. So after October 16th, there will not be any more comments accepted. There won't be any more opportunity to provide either written or oral testimony. So that date is very important. I know a lot of you have already provided comments to commissioners. But if there is, something else you would like them to know or hear, you have until the 16th to provide those comments to them. So all the comments received through the 16th will be compiled and provided to the commission for them to review and to consider. Those comments are going to be posted to the commission's December meeting webpage. And when that webpage does get up, I will again send the link to that information to the Rulemaking Advisory Committee. So those materials should be posted sometime around the 3rd week of November. And then that will take us to our next commission meeting, which is going to be on December 5th. And at that meeting, the commission will consider all the public comment that we've provided to them, over the past 2 months. The commission may ask questions of staff to support their deliberations, and then we expect that they will vote on the rulemaking. So we currently anticipate that any rules that the commission chooses to adopt would have an effective date of January 1st, 2025. So that really is a recap of what to expect over the next 2 months per process. So again, if you have not yet provided comments for the commission's consideration, you're welcome to do so. You're encouraged to do so, but you do have to get those in before 11:55 p.m. on October 16th. And you can do that by emailing Casaria Taylor. Coordinator Casaria, did you want to add anything on process expectation?
I think I followed most of
Do
what
you
you
have anything else
to
to add? At this point, we may be discussing things later in the meeting that'll make me think about something if people want to bring something up to the commission before the 16th, I'll talk about that then.
So really, with that, that's generally the process, generally what we can expect for the next 2 months. And so this is now an opportunity for RAC members to ask any questions, again, about the process, what we can expect over the next 2 months, or any questions that you might have about the content of the proposal. And if you want to add something for the group, please just go ahead and raise your hand and we'll go ahead and call on folks. Olivier?
Thanks, Larry. Thanks for laying out the process. Can you explain why DLCD is not considering any revision based on the comments of public? It's like, it seems a little unusual to me from the agency perspective that they would seek public comments, but decide not to revise even before the end of public comment period.
So staff has provided our proposal to the commission at this point. And we have not sort of received any comments that would encourage us to change our recommendation for the commission at this point. Gordon, did you want to add something?
Yeah, thank you for your question, Olivier. I would say that the people who suggested changes as part of their comments either wanted us to perhaps take up issues like replacement dwellings that we're not ready to take up at this point, or the primary ones that were critical were from agritourism. And the way I would characterize the comments were they are unhappy with the current state of the statutory provisions and case law, and would like those changed. And our well, first of all, we can't change the statutory provisions by rule anyway. But secondly, the commission gave us direction to codify, if you will, the case law. And if people are unhappy with the case law, they would like us to change that. Now, theoretically, the commission could change its point of view and decide that it wanted to alter the case law provisions on some of the agritourism matters, but and they still theoretically at least could give us that direction. But at this point, we as the department are following that direction and did not feel it was appropriate to make any changes to the draft recommendation. And I would also point out that we did extensively modify the draft recommendation throughout the rulemaking advisory committee process. So it's not like we started out with something in March and it stayed static the whole time. There have been some major changes in many of the items as we've gone through.
Samantha, and then Blair.
So I know I haven't submitted my comments yet, and I know several other groups are still in the process of getting their comments submitted too. I think my question is whether or not because we still have just under a week to get additional comments in, what will be staff's process for reviewing those? And then at that point, based upon what you read, how will the RAC and we be aware if the department does decide ultimately that they need to change some of the rules because of potentially pending legal challenges to the rules or any other issues that are raised in the comments?
All right, thank you, Samantha. And so we may choose to address comments received in our staff report for the commission. But at this point, these comments are going to the commission directly. And the commission may also ask staff at the December meeting to respond to some of those comments as well and be prepared to do so.
I would add to that I think it is possible that between now and the end of comment period, we get a comment with a compelling argument that wasn't considered before to propose a change in the language that as staff, when we review, and that would eventually be reviewed through the director, we would modify potentially the recommendation, and the modification would first be revealed, if you will, in the staff report to the commission, which would go out a couple weeks before. That's possible. I wouldn't necessarily say it's unlikely because who knows, what's going to come forward. And if, for instance, if your comment, Samantha made a strong case for an issue, even a minor technical change in the language, we would, as the department, would consider that in our recommendations going forward to the commission.
Okay. Yeah, we've been through this before where there are changes that have to be made. My one comment is, it's always really difficult for the public when in the same hearing into which the rules are voted for adoption, that changes are made without the public being able to see the red line of that, which I know is within, the agency's purview to a certain degree. But if there are proposed changes going to be made, it would be helpful, I think, if the agency is able to put out some sort of document or certain sort of red line that kind of makes that very clear. And that might well be in the staff report, but sometimes that gets buried and it's hard for people to see exactly what, was changed at the last minute.
appreciate that, and we can do that. I would say, though, if there were a comment that came in that caused the department to significantly reconsider an issue for major changes, although I can't speak for the director, I suspect that she would want to, at that point, open it up for additional comment and not just go straight to a commission meeting. For instance, if suddenly the home occupations language changed in a significant way in one way or the other, for example, we would want to get more public comment, I suspect, in that kind of a situation.
All right, thank you. Blair, you had your hand earlier. Did you still have something you wanted to share?
Yeah. So, Hillary, I think that you presented a 2-pager on agritourism uses allowed in exclusive farm use zones in the joint presentation that you and Jim Johnson gave to the Board of Agriculture and LCDC in August, I believe. And it seems to be just sort of a lot of the buzz or the press and the commentary and testimony around the rulemaking reflects, I think, a lot of misunderstanding about what's allowed now and what's not allowed now. And I didn't know if you couldn't maybe I just found that super helpful. I didn't know everything on it. For example, I think, one of the types of uses that we're hearing kind of a lot of concern about are corn mazes and pumpkin patches and educational facilities. Some of those things can be a farm use if you're not charging a fee, right? Or they can be agritourism if you are charging a fee and have seasonal permits. Other folks have them along with the farm stand, but there seems to be confusion about that in the public discussion. So I just think if you could find a way to help clarify that more generally, maybe and I don't know if it's in the presentation to LCDC or now, in the months leading up to that, but there is definitely a lot of confusion, and I think it's generating anxiety that maybe that doesn't need to be had, that many of these uses are allowed.
Thank you, Blair. So Blair is referencing a table that was actually prepared by one of the previous farm and forest specialists for the department that has been used off and on over the past couple of years to characterize the variety of different types of tourism and hospitality uses that are available in farm zones, and that table will be included in the Farm and Forest report to the legislature. That's the report the department provides every other year before the start of long session. And it has something similar to that effect has been included in previous reports. But that full table will be part of the report that goes out this year as well.
I will just make a comment that if DLCD has anything in writing that outlines how agritourism activities can be cited as a farm use, I think that would be extremely helpful for the public to know, especially the planners, because I don't think that is generally correct, and I don't think that that is the interpretation that most counties have. So I would love to see that.
So I'd be happy to provide a copy of this. I don't think it's directly related to the rulemaking, but if there are RAC members who are interested in having a copy of that table, I'm happy to circulate that as well.
Why is it where it? We do owe it to.
All right. Are there any other questions about the process or content of the rulemaking proposal?
Blair has her hand up. It gets blurred with her background.
Sorry, Blair. Okay, it does get blurred with your background. Yeah.
But it used to not be hard.
And Blair, you're on mute.
Thank you. I've raised this before, so I just want to kind of give a last run at it. I'm concerned about, and I want to understand again, sort of the planner's need and the rationale for the new multipath permitting process that's in the draft rules for the home occupations. So we're concerned that that could be interpreted as sort of opening up and making it kind of more confusing and creating more problems and conflict over what exactly is allowed now as a home occupation, because it seems to say that everything that's allowed in the zone is allowed as a home occupation. That seems quite dramatic, a change. So, but I know also that that was put in because of some of the comments of some of the county planners about concerns. So I would just love it if we could sort of revisit that discussion. Hillary, subject to you and Gordon being comfortable with that. It's just, I think it'd be helpful if there's not other things we have to address.
Sure, I'll go over that particular proposal. Again, it's a confusing one too, and it's a little bit difficult and challenging to explain, but essentially there's two parts of it. So we are introducing language into rule to modify the requirements for home occupation. So the first modification is that if the use that is going to be the subject of that home occupation, the business essentially that's going to be occupied, the business that is going to be conducted from that home. If that use is also listed in Chapter 215, and therefore it's also listed in the 120 table of our rules, the home occupation version of that use cannot be more intensive than the limitations and conditions that would otherwise apply to that use. So that language closes the door on having something approved as a home occupation that is more intensive than something that would otherwise be allowed. Sure. So the cidery business is the example that we've been using. So the legislature has long standards requirements for cidery businesses and statutes. They spent a lot of time breweries, cideries, wineries, filling out what we think those types of businesses are. We also historically have seen a lot of permits for wineries, cideries, breweries, and meaderies as home occupation. And so what we're saying here with this language is that you cannot have a home occupation cidery business that is more intensive in scope and scale than the legislature would permit for a cidery business under 215-451, for example. So 215-451 says that a cider business cannot have more than 18 events a year. And so you could not have a home occupation cidery that had more than 18 events per year, for example. There's a limit on the gallons per year that can be produced as a cider business under 215-451. So you could not produce more cider as a home occupation. If you wanted something that was more intensive than what is described by the legislature and statute, or more intensive than what we describe in a rule for a particular use, the commercial activity in conjunction with farm use pathway is also available. And this is in response to feedback that we heard from county planners that they like the flexibility to right size people's dreams and visions into the appropriate permitting pathway. So, for example, somebody just getting started and they're going to have, production in their garage, and, maybe they're going to offer a couple of tasting events throughout the year to get their product out there. And that would be maybe appropriately considered as a home occupation. They don't have 15 acres in orchard. They don't have, they don't want a lot of the other things that might be permitted at a cidery under 215-451, right? And then if somebody wants to graduate into a cider business under 215-451, they've got their orchard up and running, they can choose to pursue that permit approval. And then if they have a cidery business that they want to engage in more intensive activities, then there's always the opportunity of pursuing it as a commercial activity in conjunction with farm use, subject to those standards.
On this one, I feel like
Their second part of the proposal for home occupations is to clarify that what is meant by a home occupation is something that is accessory, incidental, and subordinate to a primary residential use of a dwelling on a property, right? So there's got to be a home that is being occupied, and that business is meant to be sort of incidental and subordinate to a residential use. So it's something that is, you know, a little business also being run out of the home. It is not like a gigantic business, a dynamic commercial activity with maybe a caretaker unit, the property. Okay. So those are the two things that are intended by the language modification.
Yeah,
Gordon,
Hillary,
did you want to add? Yeah.
The one thing I want to add is the second part that Hillary mentioned about it being primary or secondary to a residence only applies for the multipath permitting issues, not more generally to home occupations. I know that issue was brought up in our committee. And I think as a more general look at home occupations in the future, that might be an issue, but it wasn't part of our charge to be more generally looking at whether that provision, which is not in the statute that the legislature wrote, although it does appear in many local codes, but not in the legislature statute, we didn't feel comfortable without further discussion and review and, putting that out to more generally to home occupations. It's only for this small subset of home occupations that can be processed as either, say, a cidery or a home occupation, that this residential limitation, if you will, or primary residential provision applies.
you want to tell us everything you think when we need. I mean, in the perfect world, and
Did that help clarify the intended effect, Hillary?
I still don't like. I guess what I understand is why the cidery provisions are allowed. It's in conjunction with farm use. Home occupations don't require the farm use connection. So you're allowing the cideries to come as a home occupation without requiring the farm connection, right? Without having anything planted or any sort of establishment of farm use. So I think that's unfortunate and a weakening. I also thought that sort of the purpose of, one of the primary purposes of this rulemaking was to limit the multipath, the confusion of the multipath permitting and the difficulties it's caused. So this opens it up a lot more. And you keep talking about cideries, but there's 60 uses in there, right? So how are all those 60 uses in the farm zone going to play out in this? So it seems like you're opening a can of worms for what's not a real clear policy direction. The counties can allow, small cideries, right? I mean, it just seems like sort of is that really what home occupations are? I would love some of the counties to talk about, because I don't, Austin, I think maybe talked about it last time. It's just unpersuasive. I realize it's the staff's position. It just strikes me as really, really risky and not needed. So.
Only other thing I'd point out as a comment is that remember that a home occupation is also a 215, 283 sub 2 use. So it is a conditional use under any circumstances and requires the farm impacts test. So it's not, if it were a type 1 use, I think we might have a different situation, at least as far as the staffs look at it. But the fact that it's also a type 2 use means it is a conditional use subject to the farm impacts test. And I mean, so that's a factor as well.
yeah,
Again, I just would add that, in reviewing the types of things that are permitted as home occupations or have historically been permitted as home occupations, there are a wide variety of these uses that are already being permitted through this pathway. And the hope is that we're providing additional clarity on where the upward limit on the sort of scale and intensity of that use actually is. Because we do see reports of pretty intensive operations being permitted as home occupations.
Oh, yeah, I got it.
Other questions or comments on this topic or any of the other proposal provisions?
We'll put in order. Before you, and Sean, remind me, is there
No more questions?
rule in the back end?
Well, with that, if you do have other questions, you can always reach out to staff and we're happy to provide, information on the content of the proposal or on the process going forward. And again, if you do have additional comments that you would like the commission to consider and their deliberations, the deadline for getting those comments in is going to be 11:55 p.m. on October 16th. So just want to make sure everybody is aware of that so you can get your last comments, final opinions expressed. So with that, I would again express gratitude. This has been a lot of hours of reading material and of conversation, and we really appreciate, all of the feedback that we've received from every one of the MAC members, actually. We do appreciate it quite a lot. So thank you very much to everyone, and we're excited to move forward through the remainder of this process. Again, don't hesitate to reach out if you have any other questions. So with
Thank you
that,
for me as well.
we'll say goodbye and let you enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Sure, they're seeking.
That was, I think everyone's gone now, so
Are we stopped recording? Casaria?
Appropriately, Matt. I'm just a developer.
I think she's not with us right now, so I think we are still recording.
Oh, terrible. I'm just saying.
Okay.
I am.
The middle.
Well, if I'm
end this, can't seem to stop the recording, so I'll end this and maybe hit you up on Teams. All right.